Welcome. Welcome to this debate for candidates for special election for the Pennsylvania 22nd Senate District, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service at the University of Scranton and the Political Science Department at the University of Scranton. My name is Diana Daigie, currently president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. The mission of the League of Women Voters is to promote participation by informed citizens in their government. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, which means we do not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The League of Women Voters is an organization of men and women of voting age. I encourage our viewers to join the League, which you can do on our website, lwvlackawanna.org. Membership connects you with 3 levels of the League: county, state, and national. We thank the University of Scranton for providing this facility for today's debate that we are holding without an audience. We are video recording it for subsequent viewing by the public. Please be aware that it is our policy that no person, candidate, or political group is allowed to excerpt or edit today's debate recording. Campaigns may post a link to the debate where voters may view it in its entirety. Andrea Mulrine will serve as moderator for today's debate. She is a board member and past president of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. Thank you, and I will turn the debate over to Andrea.
Thank you, Diana, and good morning, everyone. This is a special election for the Pennsylvania 22nd Senate District, a seat that was previously held by John Blake, who was elected to a 4-year term in 2018. The special election will determine the state senator to fill the remainder of the vacant term, which ends in 2022. Although this special election is being held on May 18th, which is, of course, the same date as the municipal primary election, this is not a primary. The winner of this election will be immediately sworn in after election results are certified. The 22nd Senatorial District encompasses all of Lackawanna County, part of Luzerne County consisting of the township of Pittston and the boroughs of Avoca, DuPont, and Duryea, and part of Monroe County consisting of the townships of Barrett, Coolbaugh, and Price. This will be approximately a 75-minute debate. All candidates will answer the same set of questions. No questions were given in advance. Each candidate will be allowed up to 2 one-minute rebuttals. They can use more than 1 minute allotment at one time if desired, and all candidates will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement. As you can see, with COVID restrictions, our candidates are seated alphabetically and masked, but they will progress to their microphones to answer their questions and unmask at that time so that you, the audience, will have a better sense of who the candidate is and how they're answering. So our candidates today are Nathan Covington, who is on the Libertarian Party, and Marty Flynn, who is running on the Democratic Party, and Marlene Sebastianelli, who is running on the Green Party. So you will see all of these, and we encourage all registered voters in the 22nd District to get out and vote, not just those who are Republican or Democratic in this particular election. So having said that, I would invite you, if you want to learn more about the candidates and their platforms and their personal history and qualifications, I would invite you to search them out on their websites or their Facebook pages. You can find a lot of information on all the candidates there. So with that, we are going to get right into questioning. And we had a draw to see who would answer the first question first. And the first question will go to Marty Flynn. So Marty, if you would progress to the microphone. We're going to start with a question pertaining to the pandemic. As of yesterday, Pennsylvania had 26,179 lives lost due to COVID-19. We have seen tensions and legal wrangling between the legislature and the executive branch concerning the need for protocols of quarantining and social distancing versus the need to carry out basic functions of the economy. Here is your question. What do you believe is the role of the legislature in determining the proper balance between medical safety and the economy? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you for that question, Andrea. I believe the governor has done a great job in mitigating the COVID-19 virus. There are issues that I've disagreed with him on, In terms of his veto overrides, I voted against him once when it came to children at sporting events, having the parents go to sporting events. I supported the parents there. But on all other cases, I supported the governor because I think he did a very good job. Did he make mistakes? Yes. But it's a pandemic. We're getting through this. And Pennsylvania's response has been rated in the top 5 in the country for dealing with COVID. So I think his actions have saved a lot of lives.
Thank you. Marlene, the question goes to you. What do you believe is the role of the legislature in determining the proper balance between medical safety and the economy?
I look at this a little bit differently with my healthcare background. I work in the nursing home business, and through the pandemic saw both sides of it. I'm also a small business owner, and I saw another side of that. I think one of the things we need to stay focused on moving forward for this is the real live data. I think that's what we have to focus on moving forward in the science and the data. Are there things that we could have done differently? And were we being reactive versus proactive and implementing policy? I think that's something that we have to think about. In the nursing homes, that was one of the hardest hit areas when it came to deaths. Moving forward, I think we need to make sure that there is policy implemented for adequate supplies, management, the ability to order those supplies and have them on hand, and also to be able to take care of those people in those environments. As a small business owner, I think that the complete shutdown of the businesses was very detrimental and devastating to the businesses. I think that they had opportunity, that they could have had more data before they did the mass shutdown and see if the mask and the social distancing had that opportunity to decrease versus taking away the livelihood of all the people that it did so abruptly. So moving forward, I think we need to be proactive and implement that the nursing homes have the policy in place that they can take care of the people, and that we can continue to practice safe social distancing and masking as appropriate until we reach herd immunity. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nathan, please progress. The same question to you. What do you believe is the role of the legislature in determining proper balance between medical safety and the economy?
Thank you for the question. Personally, my mother's an ICU nurse, and my grandmother, I lost her about a year ago in the nursing home, so this really hits home for me. As a small business owner, I believe that we should not have been shut down. I think that the government should have let the economy operate more independently. I think a fair, open market is the best way to run things, and I believe the legislature should be working in unison with the governor for these types of things. It's important that nobody acts unilaterally, and that's why I think the referendums that are coming up are very important. Thank you.
Okay. Marlene, the next question goes to you first, so please go to the microphone. And let's talk about voting, something, of course, that's very important to the League of Women Voters. Through legislation passed in 2019, all of Pennsylvanians could vote by mail. A lesson learned report compiled by the Pennsylvania Department of State determined that to ensure the accurate count of the ballots, counties must be allowed to begin pre-canvassing ballots in the weeks before Election Day. The question to you is, do you support legislation to allow pre-canvassing for all Pennsylvania elections and any other changes to our voting laws? And please explain your rationale.
Thank you. I am in support of having as much accessibility to voting to our constituents as possible. I think it's important for us to be advocates, to get our constituents out there to vote, because sometimes they don't feel that there's always a reason to go out and vote and that their voice is not always heard. And I think if we have roadways and blocks to that are not going to make that occur, I think that we'll have less constituents coming out to vote and a less amount of the voices heard in some of the important topics that need to be discussed and things that are going on right now with the pandemic and so many other issues with business and the livelihood of our constituents. So I think that access to ballot accessibility is very, very important, and I think that we need to continue to make it accessible, and that we need to not put roadways or blocks in ways for people to be able to get their vote and their voice heard.
Okay, thank you. Nathan, the same question to you. Do you support legislation to allow pre-canvassing or any other changes to our voting laws? And explain your rationale.
I think it's important that we encourage everyone to participate in voting and getting access to the ballot. I think it's important also that we keep our elections as fair and transparent as possible, and really not give any wiggle room to people to question it. We need to, we need to keep people on board with the elections. If people don't believe that they're fair, then that's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marty, the question goes to you. Do you support legislation to allow pre-canvassing and any other changes to our voting laws? And explain your rationale.
Yes, the answer is yes to that, Andrea. I don't look at voting as a privilege. I look at it as a right. I think we as Americans have a right to vote, and any impeding of that right is wrong. We should be making access easier. And all across this country, including in Pennsylvania, there's a movement right now to limit access to the ballot box and make it harder for people that don't look like us, that are minorities, to vote. A member of the other major party, Republican Party, that's actually running in this race who's not here, their party is introducing tons of legislation to try and stop that, stop people from accessing the ballot box. So my answer is yes, I do support more access to an open and free and fair elections where people have absentee voting as an option, and where they can get out and get registered much easier. Same day, online, these things are things that we should explore, especially in this digital age. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan, the next question goes to you first. And this question, is following along on the lines of voting, but specifically about the primary system in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is only one of 9 states with a closed primary system allowing only registered Republican and Democratic voters to choose candidates. Voter turnout in primaries is typically low, below 20%, and primary candidates therefore don't really engage with the wider electorate that they will need to represent. There are movements nationally and in many states to change primary systems, either to open primaries to voters who are not registered as Republican or Democratic, or systems such as nonpartisan top 4. Last session, the Pennsylvania Senate held hearings acknowledging that the current system is not working for parties or for voters. So the question to you, Nathan, what changes to Pennsylvania's primary system will you support, if any? And please explain your answer.
I believe I can answer this on behalf of the Libertarian Party. I learned something interesting about open primaries recently. When a Libertarian, if we did have open primaries where the Libertarians could be on the ballot, you could have people from the 2 main parties actually vote to boost up somebody from one of the smaller parties, maybe one of the weaker candidates on, for example, the Libertarian or the Green Party. So there is potential for abuse in that direction as well. So I'm paying attention carefully to this, and I think we should be discussing it more. Thank you.
Marty, the same question goes to you. What changes to Pennsylvania's primary system will you support, and explain your rationale?
I would support open primaries. I think it's about the candidate. It's not about the party. Everyone should have open access to the ballot box, whether it's a primary or it's a general election, and I would support that in Pennsylvania, first and foremost.
Thank you. Marlene, the question to you. What changes to Pennsylvania's primary system will you support, and explain your rationale?
I would also support open ballot as a third-party candidate in this special election. Fortunately, I was able to get on the ballot because we have minor party status. But if I was in a primary election, I would not be able to go out and vote if this wasn't a special election. And I think that there are so many people out there, and one of our larger parties right now is the independent group, that you're not seeing them be a Democrat or a Republican in the 2 major establishments. So I think we're seeing a lot of turnout being low in the primaries because people aren't able to go out and vote the way they want to vote. And I think they need to have a voice and they need to be heard, and that this is something that needs to be changed.
Okay, thank you very much. So Marty, the next question will go to you first, and let's move on to the minimum wage. There are 29 states with a minimum wage higher than the federal minimum of $7.25, and Pennsylvania is the only mid-Atlantic state that has not raised the $7.25 hourly minimum wage since its adoption in 2009, 12 years ago. Should the Pennsylvania minimum wage be increased? Please explain your rationale, and if your answer is yes, By how much and on what timeline?
$15 an hour I support, Andrea. There's been many different bills introduced. As you know, we're the only state, all surrounding states around Pennsylvania have a higher minimum wage than we do. So that hurts us with people coming to Pennsylvania. They don't want to come here because the minimum wage is too low. And another issue we face is people can't make it on minimum wage. It's not possible to not live in poverty on minimum wage. So if we move the minimum wage, there's some bills out there now that will gradually move it to $15 an hour, but they go to $10, then $12, then $15. I would support minimum wage increase to $15 an hour. A rising tide lifts all boats, and you know a lot of people complain about saying that it'll drive the price up on everything, but the price goes up on everything anyway. It doesn't matter what your job is, you should be able to make a living and not a poverty living if you work 40 hours a week, and you can't do that right now on $7.25 an hour.
Thank you. Marlene, the question goes to you. Should the minimum wage be increased? Explain your rationale, and if yes, by how much and on what timeline?
I completely agree that the minimum wage currently isn't a livable minimum wage. But I also look at it from a couple different perspectives. We do need to get to $15 an hour for minimum wage, but I think we need to be careful and cautious in how we do that. As a small business owner, if we increased our minimum wage to $15 an hour, that would be a big impact on our bottom line if we did not have the revenue to offset that. I would be in favor of a gradual increase over several years to get to that $15 an hour. We have other states that surround us that are in the process of doing that now, where you'll see that over a year they'll increase $1 and then 70 cents and then $2 to get us to that $15 amount, which helps offset with some of those expenses for small businesses and be able to allow our constituents to have a higher wage to be able to make a better living. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nathan, the question goes to you. Should the minimum wage be increased? Explain your rationale, and if yes, by how much and on what timeline?
Yes, I'm on board with raising the minimum wage. I think it's been long overdue. I'm hesitant to go, like Marty said, all the way up to 15 right away. I think that would be risky. I have a few thoughts for you just to kind of mix in a few other ideas. First of all, I don't believe the minimum wage was meant to support a family of 4. I think a minimum wage job was meant to be entry-level jobs, people that are getting out of high school who didn't really need to support themselves like a family of 4. So I think the minimum wage is a little, we should talk about this more. And my other thought is the larger businesses can afford $15 an hour. So, your Lowe's and your Home Depot and your Walmart, they're probably going to be fine if we go with $15 an hour. It's the little guys, the small businesses that are going to get crushed by it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question. Marlene, you'll be the first to answer this question, and let's move on to the topic of policing. So although Governor Wolf appointed a watchdog and created a commission to investigate alleged misconduct by the Pennsylvania State Police and other law enforcement agencies under his purview, additional statewide reforms, such as changing how officers can use deadly force, improving access to body camera footage, and strengthening oversight for the hundreds of municipal departments, would require approval from the legislature. Legislation to create a disciplinary database and require additional training and mental health screenings for officers has been proposed in the Senate, but a version of the measure has been sitting in committee without a hearing since March 2019. As a senator, here's your question. As a senator, what reforms to law enforcement practices would you support, and what action will you take to make sure they get out of committee?
Thank you. This is a really huge topic, especially with all of the adversity that we've been through the pandemic. I know that we have a lot of issues going on for people that have been struggling with not having jobs and not being able to support their loved ones. And it's kind of brought us into a whole other realm of things of depression and true increase of mental health issues. And I think that one of the hugest things that we need to do is get that out of committee, because the mental health aspect and the education and the support that needs to happen for our police and our people that protect us every day, they need to have that support and the ability to be able to get that done. We don't always look at everything through the same eye, and I think that sometimes we have to take into consideration how we can manage those and get that stuff done for our constituents in District 22. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan, the same question goes to you. As a senator, what reforms to law enforcement practices would you support, and what action will you take to make sure they get out of committee?
This is a tricky question here. I'm here to spread the message of peace and love, and I believe right now we can't really get rid of police. I'd love to say that we can. You know, I think as a species we're going to get there eventually, but right now we need the police, and you know, I'd love to start working away from that. You know, I think if more people live in love and harmony, then we won't need as much police. So that's the way I'd like to try to steer things. You know, one of the big topics that's come up recently is the qualified immunity with the police. And from what I understand, that was something that they did not have historically. If they stepped over the line without qualified immunity, the police could be sued, their house, their car. And what happened was the police kind of stopped, you know, responding the way that they could have. And then when they brought the qualified immunity into the discussion, you know, it kind of swung things in the opposite direction. So, you know, where do we go from here? Good question. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marty, the question still goes to you now. As a senator, what reforms to law enforcement practices would you support, and what action will you take to make sure they get out of committee?
Andrea, as a representative, I passed legislation, bipartisan legislation we passed for criminal justice reform. And the issue of qualified immunity with police right now, that's a hot topic. I stand with our police on this. I don't believe in defunding the police. I think cameras have now brought to light a lot of the bad policing that's happened over the years. But I think more access and passing legislation with more access to cameras for police departments to root out the 1 or 2% bad apples that have been plaguing our police departments across the country is going to help solve the problem there with good policing. But defunding the police is not something I would support, and I think it's paramount that we work through this issue both socially and politically to get things done. There's definitely a bipartisan vigor to work around these issues in Harrisburg. That's something that we've been able to get done, like I said, with bipartisan criminal justice reform. But the policing package, we're still waiting on to vote on. So hopefully we can move forward there and get things done.
Okay, thank you. Nathan, this next question will go to you first, and let's talk about firearms. Pennsylvania's preemption rule limits the ability of cities to enact ordinances such as mandating the reporting of lost or stolen firearms and limits on the possession or transfer of military-style assault weapons. Legislation has been promoted in the past that would strike the prohibition on municipal gun regulations from state law. So the question, do you favor allowing some local control on guns, and what do you believe is the proper balance among conflicting individual rights and collective rights with regard to firearms?
This is another tricky one. I believe it comes down to having laws that can actually be enforced. So this is, again, a great conversation piece. You know, the tricky part with outlawing guns, they've already outlawed murder, you know, and people still do it. So, I mean, you can make guns illegal too. The criminals don't listen. So it's a tough one. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty, the question to you, do you favor allowing some local control on guns, and what do you believe is the proper balance among conflicting individual rights and collective rights with regard to firearms?
I believe that state law should supersede local law. Federal law should supersede state law. But at the same time, I believe in the Second Amendment for responsible gun ownership. I also believe that, you know, there's some things that we as Pennsylvanians can do, like close up loopholes where people are buying firearms and straw purchases, and definitely extended background checks is another issue that I would support. But that's about it.
Okay. thank you. Marlene, the question to you, do you favor allowing some local control on guns? And what do you believe is the proper balance among conflicting individual rights and collective rights with regard to firearms?
I look at gun control in a different light. I look at it as gun responsibility, the ownership of the person who has that gun. I think that there's a few things that we can look at doing to help this, and universal background checks is one of them. In the healthcare sector, we need to go through that process, and we have certain criterias of what someone would be on their record would not allow them to work in that type of field and take care of people. And I think that's something that we should look at when it comes to background checks for guns. I also feel that mental health education plays another huge key into this, and that there needs to be more accessible funding and grants for that, for people that have that mental health funding. And also in-home safety education. I also think that there's other things that we can do. We can't always prevent that person that's going out and having that breakdown and causing, going out to kill people, but we could look at other things that we can help. Possibly putting trigger lots on guns so we can have them in the home and safer environment for people, and the parents teaching that educational part of when the right time and the wrong time is for guns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marty, this next question is going to go to you first. We're going to talk about marijuana now. In Pennsylvania, the effort to legalize adult use cannabis reform is enjoying bipartisan support with plans to introduce a comprehensive bill in the Senate. Although legalization is moving forward rapidly in various states, more than 20,000 cannabis consumers were arrested in Pennsylvania for simple possession during 2020. Some feel that full legalization and regulation is a vehicle to more jobs and much needed tax revenue. What is your position on the topic of marijuana legalization?
Andrea, I support adult use marijuana. I support the decriminalization of marijuana. What it's costing our criminal justice system is unfair. It's unfair to minority peoples. It also could be a multi-million-dollar cash crop for our state. You know, as you know, our state faces fiscal imbalance. Next year, we're looking at a $2.5 billion budget deficit. Legalizing marijuana would definitely help with hundreds of millions of dollars in profit to help balance that negative. So that's something that we've seen other states do. We've seen Colorado is helping fund their schools. You know, our per pupil funding here is suffered, and this is something that could be a shot in the arm to help educate our children. So I support legalization of cannabis.
Okay, thank you. Marlene, the question goes to you. What is your position on the legalization of cannabis?
I am for legalization of cannabis. We have states that surround us right now where we have people that can drive there 45 minutes within an hour, and they can go make that purchase, and they're getting the tax benefits. So we're leaving a lot of tax money on the table where we can bring that back to our community, increase our educational funding, and help some of our area schools that are really suffering. I also believe that the benefits of the marijuana versus some of the other issues that we're dealing with the opioid crisis is another alternative that is less hurtful to some of the individuals when they're utilizing that product. So I think the benefit and the increase in the value from a tax standpoint and the revenue and the jobs that it would create here would be very great for our area.
Okay, thank you. And Nathan, the question goes to you. What is your position on legalization of marijuana?
I'm in favor of supporting of legalizing marijuana. I hesitate to recommend that we use it for a source of tax revenue, though. I'm not sure that's the best plan. I'm not sure where the money would come from, but I'm concerned top to bottom with the government just searching for more sources of tax revenue. I think that's a cycle that we need to end. So what the solution is, I'm not sure, but I am in favor of legal marijuana. Thank you.
All right. Marlene, this next question goes to you. And let's talk about the Affordable Care Act now. So the constitutionality of the National Affordable Care Act is again being reviewed by the U.S. Supreme Court. If the court found the ACA unconstitutional, tens of thousands of Pennsylvanians could lose their health insurance for numerous reasons. If this happens, which of the provisions would you advocate be protected by state law as a state senator? So I'm going to ask you 3, give me a yes or no, and then after that, then we can start your 90-second time, okay? So if it happens, would you support continuation of the extended eligibility for Medicaid, which provides health coverage to Pennsylvanians?
I would.
So if it happens, would you continue children being eligible to remain on their parents' health insurance until the age of 26?
I wouldn't.
And would you continue the ban on denying health care based on pre-existing conditions?
I would.
So now you've got 90 seconds to explain your position on the ACA.
I'm a cancer survivor myself. And through my journey with cancer, I was provided with health insurance. And I had an excellent oncology team that was taking care of me. With that, so midway through my cancer journey, I needed to make a tough choice because my health insurance changed. And that was that I couldn't pick my own professional team of oncologists to take care of me. And I needed to come back to a different area for my care. I don't think that anybody should be confronted with that type of decision. We should all have health care accessible to us and affordable to us, and we should be able to have our needs met based on whatever your conditions are. We should be looking for ways that we can increase the viability of our healthcare system and not let the insurance companies dominate that for us. We sometimes look to those big insurance companies and allow them to continue to increase their rates and make them not affordable for people to get accessible care. Meanwhile, we need them to become healthier and safer, and instead that's not happening because they don't have the accessibility to get to the health care that they need.
Okay, thank you. Nathan, the question's going to go to you. I'm going to ask you those same 3 questions first with a yes or no, please, and then you'll have 90 seconds. So if there was an issue with the ACA provisions and we needed state laws, would you continue the extended eligibility for Medicaid?
Yes.
Would you continue children being eligible to remain on their parents' health insurance until the age of 26?
Yes.
And would you continue the ban on denying health care based on pre-existing conditions?
No.
And would you please explain your responses? And you've got 90 seconds.
Yeah, I got some pretty mixed thoughts on healthcare too. I'm a Lyme disease survivor myself. I was diagnosed with Lyme disease 4 or 5 years ago, and I feel very healthy today. I'm very fortunate. Not everyone is so lucky. So one of the things that I want to do is advocate for Lyme disease patients. I think there's a lot of controversy in the Lyme disease world, and patients need better access to care for that type of thing. My other thought for healthcare in general is, I'm not sure that healthcare is a human right. It's just my train of thought here is basically healthcare is based on technology, and technology cannot be something that specifies a human right. Human rights need to be something that you can go back in time and still offer to people. So I'm hesitant on healthcare. I'm real interested in learning more about it, and thank you.
All right, thank you. Marty, the same questions are going to go to you. So the first one, if there's an issue with the ACA and we needed state laws passed, would you continue the extended eligibility for Medicaid?
Yes.
Would you continue children being eligible to remain on their parents' health insurance until 26?
Yes.
And would you continue the ban on denying health care based on pre-existing conditions?
No.
And you have 90 seconds to explain your responses.
I believe that health care is a right. We're the richest industrial nation in the world. That matters. I believe healthcare is a right. We have a right to it. We should take care of each other. We have the money to do it. We shouldn't stop until everyone has it. I think it's that simple, Andrea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nathan, this next question is going to go to you first. So we're going to talk now about abortion, please. Many politicians state that they are pro-life or pro-choice, yet when asked, these terms mean a wide range of things to different people. There are ongoing efforts in Pennsylvania to pass legislation that restricts abortion. Where will you position yourself in these efforts? And please be specific about what you will or will not support.
I don't think the government should be involved in abortion. I think it should be made at the family level. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty, the question goes to you. Where do you position yourself on the efforts to restrict abortion in Pennsylvania? Please be specific about what you will or will not support.
My personal belief is that I'm pro-life. I don't believe in abortion. But I also don't believe I should tell a woman what her and her doctor's relationship should be with each other. So that was decided in Roe v. Wade. And until anything changes there, that's where my opinion lies.
Okay, thank you. And Marlene, the question to you. Where will you position yourself in the efforts to restrict legislation or restrict abortion in Pennsylvania? And please be specific about what you will or will not support.
I am pro-choice. I don't think we have the right to take away a woman's right to make that decision about her body. I think there are other things that we can do to help reduce that being an option, that having to be the last option for them. I think we need to look at sexual and health education. I think we need to look at, here again, healthcare accessibility for them and the affordability of it. The average birth control can cost from $15 to $100 and some. If you don't have healthcare insurance and you don't have the financial ability to make that happen, that's something we need to work towards so they aren't faced with those difficult decisions. But there are times where people can't make that decision for someone. It needs to be the decision and the right of theirs. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Marty, this next question will go to you first. Let's talk about education. This is a topic near and dear to my heart in this pandemic year with kids at home. Yes? Yes, you're next. And also about the funding that goes on. So in 2020, Senate Bill 76 would have abolished school property taxes and shift those taxes to increases in personal income taxes and sales taxes to fund education. Do you believe that a statewide system of funding education is better than the current funding system that relies primarily on property taxes set by each school district that has to be in compliance with state regulations?
Can you repeat that part, the last part?
So do you believe that a statewide system of funding education is better than the current funding system that relies primarily on property taxes?
There's still a funding formula in there that's state regulated, but I believe that the system, if your zip code didn't determine your education, how much funding you got, I would be all for it. That's why I actually voted on amendment for Senate Bill 76 to bring up the topic of property tax reform. Especially in our area, this is a huge issue that we need to bring forward. Currently, Scranton, for instance, is one of the lowest funded urban school districts in the state. The state's only kicking in around $5,000 per student, and it's really stressing our tax base. So I support the Penn Hills lawsuit against the Commonwealth for fair funding. I've introduced legislation with Representative Mullins on getting us a larger share of the fair funding formula. Right now, we only get about 8% of new monies. It would be about 8% of the budget for fair funding. But I support bringing more money to our school districts and having a fair tax system. The hard part is getting there.
Thank you. Marlene, the question now goes to you. And do you believe that a statewide system of funding education is better than the current funding system?
I think we have a lot of work to do in this area. I think House Bill 76 and Senate Bill 76 is a start towards this, but it still has some work to go. The ever-rising tax burden on the residential taxpayer is significant, and it continues to go up, most recently in a vote to increase our taxes by 11.3%. I think that the schools and our educational system need to be done more fairly with the formula so that it represents our true census and the need that's within the community. There are opportunities out there for grants that we can bring back to this community and opportunities for other revenue resources through taxation. We are one of the biggest suppliers in gas and electric for out of state and out of the country, where these producers don't have impact fees or increased severance taxes to offset that while we're paying the higher taxes here within our district. And I think those are opportunities for revenue sources to help offset that and also bring back increased funding to our educational system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Nathan, the question goes to you. Do you believe that a statewide system of funding education is better than the current funding system that relies primarily on property taxes?
Yes, I believe we should have a system where each school district gets the same amount of money per student to make it fair. I believe what's happening right now is we, the people, are getting caught in the crossfire between the two major parties. You have people in the city that want more money, and you've got the Republicans that are out in the rural areas that don't want to. So you've got people fighting right now, and nobody's winning. So yeah, like Marty said, how do we get there? It's a tangled mess. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Marlene, if I have my question orders right, you're going first on the next question. So let's talk now about some environmental issues. This one specifically about solar. Legislation with broad bipartisan support has been advanced to promote community solar that would allow electric power customers to take advantage of solar installations not directly on their properties. There is an estimated $2 billion in private investment waiting for this community solar bill to pass the General Assembly. Will you advocate to get legislation passed to allow wider use of solar power? And please explain your rationale.
Yes, I would advocate for more sustainable energy options. I think this would also help with bringing more jobs to our area. The solar manufacturing would increase jobs, and also, of course, the installation of the solar panels in our area. I think that we need to move towards more greener options to help reduce the pollution and the increased air quality and water quality in our area, and I think that moving to solar sustainable energy is a very viable option.
Okay. Nathan, the question goes to you now. Yep, and now there we go. Will you advocate to get legislation passed to allow wider use of solar power? And please explain your rationale.
I'm a supporter of the free markets, and I believe that we should not be messing around with solar the way that we are with giving tax breaks and everything else. I believe we should have the fair market decide what types of energy is being used. If we, the people, decide that solar is the way to go, they should be able to do it privately without the government's involvement. I do have just another thought while I have time up here. I want to talk about the Tennessee River Authority. They built a dam down in Tennessee on the Tennessee River. They built a hydro dam out of it, and this is something that I'd like to discuss more in Pennsylvania. It's another form of clean energy. They get a ton of money off of it. The hydro dam that they built down there actually kicked off so much money that the people had a problem. They needed to know what to do with that money. They had so much of it. So they ended up rolling out their own fiber optic internet system to the people in Tennessee. They've got gigabit, we the people internet down there. And that's the type of thing that I want to go after. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Marty, the question now goes to you. Will you advocate to get legislation passed to allow wider use of solar power? Please explain your rationale.
Yes, I think solar power is a definite option in the future. It should take some state investment to bring in here. That's something I would support. Any weaning off of the fossil fuel industry and creating jobs in that industry is definitely something that I will continue to support. It's the future. It's good for the environment, and it makes sense bringing cutting-edge jobs to Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you. So this next question, Nathan, will go to you first. We're going to stay on the topic of the environment, and I want to talk about the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is known as RGGI. It's a plan to have Pennsylvania join 10 other states in a carbon cap and invest program to gradually reduce carbon emissions from the electric power sector while generating funds to promote a positive and just transition. RGGI is in the final stages of the required rulemaking process, and 72% of Pennsylvania voters support the state's participation in this, according to a poll released in September. So the question, if you support Pennsylvania joining RGGI, what do you hope it will achieve? And if you oppose it, what would you support to lower carbon emissions from the electric power sector?
Can you repeat the question, please?
So the end of the question is, do you support Pennsylvania joining RGGI, which is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative? And if you do, what do you hope it would achieve? And if you oppose it, what would you support to lower carbon emissions?
I would be against it then. I want Pennsylvania to be independent and not be tied down with these other agreements. Again, I'm back to the free market and letting the free market decide. My other concern about everyone's using the words follow the science nowadays. My concern with that is science is not determined, or it's not supposed to tell us what to do. It's not a policy deciding thing. Science is meant to tell us what is, not what to do about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marty, the question goes to you. If you support Pennsylvania joining RGGI, what do you hope it will achieve? And if you oppose it, what would you support to lower carbon emissions from the electric power sector?
Currently, I'm undecided on my support for RGGI. Its effect on the workforce in our area. I'm still weighing in the balance. Limiting our carbon footprint in the area is definitely one of the top things we have to look at. But right now, I'm not sold on RGGI in terms of joining the pact. But I'm definitely all ears.
Okay, thank you. And Marlene, the question goes to you. If you support Pennsylvania joining RGGI, what do you hope it would achieve? And if you oppose it, what would you support to lower carbon emissions?
I don't know enough specifics about RGGI to be able to say one way or another, but there are definitely other options out there for us. Some basic things that we can be doing in our environment to help reduce some of the toxins and the tainted water and the destruction in our air are simple things that we can be doing in environmental background testing, increasing the funding to our DEP, our DCNR, and our Department of Agriculture, as those have been areas that have been, over the past several years, have had money and funds taken away from them to be able to focus on some of these things for the restoration in our land and our forest and our parks and that for moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Marty, this next question goes to you. We're going to move on to legislation and to running for office. So the first one pertains to a gift ban, okay? Currently, there's no limit on what elected lawmakers can receive from lobbyists, and any gift valued in aggregate of $250 or more, and the circumstances of the gift must be reported on a yearly disclosure form. And then transportation, lodging, and hospitality, that's more than $650, has to be reported on those forms. Cash gifts to lawmakers are also legal. Last fall, the House State Government Committee advanced a proposal to end cash gifts to lawmakers and limit the value of other presents or travel that lawmakers can accept from lobbyists and other private citizens. Then the bill failed to advance. What will you advocate for to place limits on gifts and favors from lobbyists, if anything, and explain your rationale?
I support Governor Wolf's gift ban. His ethics package, I'm all for. It's just a matter of the majority party running the actual bills to get them through. My opponent, who's not here, his firm running his campaign is a registered government lobbyist while he runs campaigns. So that's another issue we're facing here ethically. So I definitely support Governor Wolf's actions on gift bans. Any per diem reform I would support. Lowering the gift amount. I think right now it's $250. If you say you lowered that to $100, I would be in full support of that. Getting rid of transportation, no problem supporting that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Marlene, the question goes to you. What would you advocate for to place limits on the gifts and favors from lobbyists, if anything? And please explain your rationale.
I would be for banning the gifts, and also I would make that there would be a recommendation that per diems and other things like that would go away, as that is something that if you look at where we're at in our elderly population, the average Social Security income of an elderly population is around $18,300. And there are politicians that accept those per diems that outweigh that annual salary for the elderly population. And I also think, being a third-party candidate, that I do grassroots fundraising for campaigning in that, and I want the people of the constituents to be the ones that are supporting me, and not big lobbyists and big donors, as some of the other things they do in the two large establishments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Nathan, then the question goes to you. What will you advocate for to place limits on the gifts and favors from lobbyists, if anything? And please explain your rationale.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of banning gifts to politicians. I think that's great, to get people more involved in politics and kind of more believing and more, supportive of this whole institution. I think that would be a great thing, transparency and just kind of taking away that perception where there's room for collusion. I think that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Marlene, I have one last question for the group. You're going to go first, and then we'll move into closing statements. So let's talk about legislative functioning, since you're all looking to be state senators. Harrisburg has been described as the place to which good legislation goes to die. Every January 1st, House rules are hastily adopted with little discussion. Rules empower the Speaker to appoint committee chairs and members. Committee chairs of the majority party fully control what gets voted on and out of committee, and the Speaker controls what comes to a floor vote. Various proposals have been put forward to enable legislation with bipartisan support to advance. What changes would you advocate for to enable the legislature to accomplish the people's work? Please explain your answer.
Well, this is a huge problem. We know that we need to work towards more bipartisan legislature, and we need to come together on common ground. I think coming into this race as a third-party candidate brings that to the political arena in the legislation world. I'm not looking to support a few select people within the district. I'm looking to support the majority people in this district. I'm a fighter. I'll stand up for what I know is right, and I will work hard to make those changes and make that happen for the voice of the people within this district. We have so many things that we need to work on, that we need to get out there, but what's happened in our political arena, unfortunately, is that people are afraid. They're afraid of what consequences there are if they do speak up, and that their voice won't be heard. So some people just sit back, and they just take the punches instead of being part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Nathan, the question goes to you next. What changes would you advocate for to enable the legislature to accomplish the people's work, if any? And please explain your answer.
It's a slippery slope if you try to make it easier to pass laws. I think, the system that we have in place, for all of its faults and things that we could kind of criticize about it, it does seem to kind of go slowly, and I think that's good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marty, the question goes to you. What changes would you advocate for to enable the legislature to accomplish the people's work, if any? And please explain your response.
Andrew, I would say that I would, in a perfect world, I would introduce legislation that would make all legislation have to have a voting committee. Majority chairman don't even have to bring up your bill. You could have the best idea in the world, and they'll steal your idea and introduce it themselves. Historically, in the legislature, about 40% of the bills that were passed by the minority party. Now we're down to like 4%. It's getting really hard to get any ideas passed and get people to support them from the other side, and it's really killing our democracy in a sense, because we can't get anything done as a minority party, and it's not fair. So my cure to that is, I think every bill that a member introduces should have to come up in committee. Okay. And I'd just like to take a moment of some time that I have left to say that I really want to thank my opponents here for being here and being part of this debate. It's a big deal. They're showing that they're fighters, and they're showing up in the arena. They're not.
Marty, I don't want to interrupt you, but you do have 2 minutes for a closing statement, just so you know.
Okay, thanks.
This isn't your closing statement. We're going to give you more time, but you can certainly take the rest of your time. I didn't want to interrupt you. So, sorry about that. So thank you. And so we now have time for closing statements. So each candidate is allowed 2 minutes for a closing statement. We did draw to see who would give the first closing statement, and that will be Nathan. So Nathan, I invite you to the microphone for your closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
I have a short poem that I wrote. All right. Again, I'm here to spread the message of peace and love. There are 4 things that humans need. Not many people talk about this, but food, shelter, clothing, and purpose. Purpose is the 4th thing that hardly anyone ever talks about. And my experience here comes from, I'm not from Scranton, I'm from about 45 minutes from here. I live in a second-class township down in Monroe County. And I wanted to share this poem with everyone because this is kind of my vision for cleaning up Scranton, cleaning up Harrisburg, kind of just, I don't know, like Marty said, a rising tide lifts all ships, and I think that's a great phrase. That's actually on my little note here. So anyways, this poem is called In a Second-Class Township Near You. In a second-class township near you, auditors don't actually audit. They hire a CPA firm instead. That way the township is legally eligible to receive grant money. In a second-class township near you, auditors should actually be called employee wage setters. We don't actually audit. In a second-class township near you, the supervisor can also be the roadmaster. He can be his own boss. You can have the treasurer also be, the township treasurer can also be a supervisor. In a second-class township near you, a former supervisor might also happen to own the local newspaper. In a second-class township near you, supervisors can post things in that paper and then other official notices in another paper. Those are just some of the things that I found in my journey here. So, in general, I think I'd like my government to be run more like a business. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope those of you at home are cheering for your candidate in this pandemic world. We are without an audience today. So thank you, Nathan. And I invite Marty Flynn, and I apologize, Marty, for interrupting you before. You have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you, Andrew, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for having me here again. And thank you to my opponents for taking the time out of their busy schedules to show up and show their fighters in the political arena. There's no frauds here. The only fraud didn't show up. I've been serving in the legislature for 9 years as a state representative. I grew up in Scranton, spent my entire life here. My dad was a plumber, my mother was a waitress. I worked 2 jobs to get through college. It wasn't always easy. I ended up becoming a corrections officer for 10 years. I owned a small business. Decided to put my hat in the ring to become a state representative. I went against my own party, became the state representative, and didn't stop fighting since I got there. I brought over $23 million back to my district in the 9 years that I've been serving. It's been an awesome journey. I love helping people. There's nothing better than helping your constituents get things done. Helping somebody save their house, getting people money from the Treasury. It's just been an absolute honor to serve the people of the 113th District. And now I want to move to the 22nd District to serve my entire region, not just my local community, by bringing jobs back, by making corporations pay their fair share, by helping everyday working people, just like me and my family, to move forward. And that's what I'm about, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marty Flynn, for your closing statement. Marlene Sebastianelli, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you for the League of Women Voters for holding this debate and the opportunity to be here for the PA Senate 22nd special election debate. Something I'd like for you to take away from this is my opponents talk about what they can do for seniors. Well, I have real-life experience, long history of working side by side healthcare workers to have the best outcomes for seniors, even through COVID. My opponents say that they want to lower your taxes, and they still haven't done that. I have common sense solutions to help increase and offset the tax burden that the residential tax burdens pay. An example of that is that we can look at out-of-state trash that is hauled in to our landfill that they want to expand, that right now is not following all of the environmental rules that they need to. I think that we can increase the impact fees for them, the tipping fees, and that could help offset some of that tax burden. And importantly, I have a lot to bring to the table. I've come from a large family and had to work very hard for everything. Every facet of my life, I fought through adversity to get to the end result. And I surround people with that for positive outcomes. Going to college while working, going through high-level executive positions and working my way all the way up through. I've had the ability to manage multi-million-dollar budgets. With all that, and working with nonprofits and volunteer organizations, and having civilian legislation partnerships that are in place now, gives me the opportunity to bring that fight to you. So I stand here today asking for your vote on May 18th, because we need to bring leadership, and leadership that doesn't back down, and that we will do the right thing, and the voices will be heard. Thank you.
Thank you to our candidates. Thank you, Marlene. Our candidates, Nathan Covington on the Libertarian Party ticket, Marty Flynn on the Democratic Party ticket, and Marlene Sebastianelli on the Green Party ticket. Thank you for your commitment to democracy and for your fortitude. It is not easy to run for an office covering this large an area, especially at a time when you can't go to large gatherings. So I certainly appreciate that. I want to invite our president, Diana Dakey, back to the podium for a few additional words from the League of Women Voters. Diana?
Thank you, candidates, for your participation and for supporting this educational program of the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County. Thank you, Andrea Mulrine, for doing a fine job as usual as our moderator. And thank you to our viewers for watching this program. We encourage all voters to cast their votes in the May 18th election. The deadline to register to vote is May 3rd, so if you are watching this program fairly soon, please be aware of that deadline. And this year we want you to know about the election that it is more than a primary for Democrats and Republicans. Usually in May, the election in an odd number year is a primary only. But there will be primary races for several municipal and county offices. Registered Republicans and Democrats will vote in those. However, this special election for the Pennsylvania Senate 22nd District is open to all voters. So we need the public to be aware that all voters need to participate in the election. And we also want all voters to be aware that there are 4 important ballot questions that they will have the opportunity to vote on in the May election. You can find out more information about these ballot questions on our website, lwvlackawanna.org. Also, I'd like the viewers to know that the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County, we held additional forums without an audience, and you will find those on our website and be able to hear from candidates in the primary for Scranton City Council, Scranton School Board, and Scranton Tax Collector. So please avail yourselves of those voter education opportunities. Thank you again for watching.